well-informed people tend to make good decisions. And there is a war being waged. Your money is being weaponized against you.
That's right.
You need to have good information so you can make good decisions so that you can protect the things that you value in life and protect your way of life. And having the tools available to you and having the information about how to use those tools is the only way people are going to have a fighting chance here.
Vigilantes, I'm here with Econoalchemist.
That's right.
Econoalchemist. And they say a couple times it's Econoalchemist.
Yeah, it kind of rolls off the tongue. It's Econoalchemist, like economy and alchemist.
Nice. You gave a talk on Bitcoin self-custody today. Could you please give us a quick rundown of what it was about? You know, like, we missed it because I was here. I missed it. What's going on?
Yeah, basically I just tried to outline why self-custody is important. And I highlight 3 reasons in my presentation why self-custody is important for anyone who's using cryptocurrencies, but I just focus specifically on Bitcoin. So, first is the custodial risk. And when I'm talking about custodial risk, there's really a few factors that come into play there. There's the fact that the custodians are more interested in maintaining their relationships with law enforcement and building regulatory moats around themselves that put the end consumer in the last position. So they're never going to make decisions about their business that put the consumer first. So if you're trusting these custodians with all of your money, then you're really putting everything you have in the hands of someone who doesn't give a flying fuck about you. Can I cuss?
100%.
Okay, so yeah, you're putting your funds in the hands of someone who doesn't give a fuck about you. You're literally just a product to them.
Yeah.
And the other problem with the custodians is not only do they prefer working with law enforcement more than you, but they are honeypot because they have all these Bitcoins on their exchange. They have all your personal information. So they're way more likely to be targeted in these sophisticated hacking attacks that we've seen, like Mt. Gox or that crypto couple from New York or wherever that stole the Bitfinex funds.
Yeah.
And once those funds get stolen, there's zero repercussion for the end user. There's no FDIC insurance. There's no SPIC insurance or SIPC insurance. There's really nothing you can do. So if that third-party custodian gets hacked, not only is all your information leaked because they had all your KYC data, but then your funds are gone too, potentially.
Right.
And then, the third thing that self-custody can mitigate is the state's monopoly on violence. And so the state has weaponized money over the years, and based on the trajectory we've been on with COVID, they've been trying to restrict your movement. They've been trying to strip away your bodily autonomy and force you to inject these experimental chemicals.
Yeah.
And dude, that's only going to get worse. Just look at the Chinese social credit system. So if you have the money that the government can access or the government can put permission around, they're going to get you, and they're going to be able to make you do things against your will so that you can still interact economically with the world around you.
Right on.
And then the one last thing was censorship, because if you have to ask someone else's permission to spend your money, their moral standard is going to take precedence over what you want to spend your money on. So if you are running a marijuana business that's legal in your state, but illegal at the federal level in the United States, then you're not going to be able to open a bank account. If you're a sex worker in the entertainment industry, you're not going to be able to have banking services. If you are even running a cryptocurrency business, you're going to have a very difficult time opening a bank account. So when you have these trusted third parties that you have to ask permission for, if they don't like what you're doing, if they don't like what you're saying, look at the Canadian Freedom.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Right? They take a whole swath of the population and cut them off from financial services. So those are the reasons why self-custody is important and why I'm an advocate for it.
Oh, 100%. So, okay, so there's self-custody. There's also the notion of privacy, right? Because arguably the guy that received the money from the Canadian truckers, he was doing self-custody, wasn't he? Not?
Yeah, so, they had custody. They did the fundraiser through Tallycoin, but once they took custody of those funds, and I'm not sure how Tallycoin works. They may have had custody from the beginning. Tallycoin may have never had custody, but in any case, they had the custody. The mistake they made is that the Bitcoin ledger is public. You don't even need a node to look at every single transaction. You just need an internet connection and a block explorer, right? So you should assume all your adversaries are also looking at all these transactions. And the problem comes from making mistakes like Tallycoin did. They just used one address to have all the donations sent to. And so anyone can look at this address on chain on the block explorer and see all the incoming transactions going to that address. Now, since it's a public ledger, you can actually start tracing those transactions backwards, and you can see where they came in from, like somebody's Coinbase account.
Wow.
Or where so now you've got real world information tied to on-chain information. And like that ledger, the Bitcoin blockchain is immutable, so you can't get rid of that. Once it's out there, it's out there. So now law enforcement, all they have to do is say, all right, trace back all the transactions that came into this address. If any of them touch on-ramp, off-ramp, a centralized exchange, then we'll just subpoena that exchange and get the information from them about the account related to the funds that came from this exchange. And so then the people who are donating have their personally identifiable information exposed. And then that can just be followed from the donation address going forward on chain now to all the 100 wallets that the truckers received. And now if those truckers go and spend that Bitcoin at a centralized exchange, then they have all their personal information on file. And then it's known that they were a recipient of these funds that have been blacklisted. And so,
wow.
Yeah, it's insane, like how many mistakes were made, but it's a good opportunity to showcase what tools like Samurai Wallet and Sparrow Wallet and their Whirlpool implementation.
Sparrow Wallet?
Yeah.
Sparrow.
Yeah, Sparrow, like the desktop.
Sparrow Wallet. Okay, and that does it do the same type of whirling and that? So Samurai, there's another one like Samurai. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that there was another one like Samurai.
Yeah, so the Samurai developers who are sponsoring this event, they developed the Whirlpool CoinJoin implementation, and then Sparrow Wallet integrated it as well. So now you got two wallets, one's a mobile, one's a desktop, and you can CoinJoin your funds and gain that forward-looking anonymity so that if you're a trucker and you receive these funds, go send them to Whirlpool, and then you can spend them wherever you want, and you don't have to worry about that connection being made to the Freedom Convoy donation address.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right.
So okay, so you're mostly you're a Bitcoin maximalist, right? Or not?
I wouldn't call myself a maximalist. I only focus on Bitcoin because there's just, frankly, so much development happening with Bitcoin. I don't have the bandwidth to focus on anything else. But I do use Monero. I do have some Monero. And so there we go.
People talk about Monero. The Monero shades go on. Okay, yeah.
I think anyone who's really honest about Bitcoin will recognize that there's a privacy blind spot. And if you want to talk about a privacy tool that's available today that gets the job done, Monero will do that.
Yep.
I don't think Monero is a good long-term store of value. I know people. Why not? I know people think that it is.
Yeah. I argued with Twin Base recently. I got into a little tuffle with him. I gave him my reason why I think it's a better store of value. than BTC. Maybe I can share it with you.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, first off, the tell-in admission assures the health of Monero miners, their financial health onto the future, whereas we don't have that security with BTC. So that assures that it is a better store of value that I can trust. Another argument, pardon?
Because you're saying that, like, what is it, like 0.6 Monero or XMR, and they can count on that being there every block.
Yes, for the forever, Monero will always secure the financial health of its miners. So I think that was part of the forethought that they saw lacking in BTC. Also, the expanding block size allows for there not to have to be a civil war. It will expand according to market demand. And then the third point is that Monero is actually, from the moment it started competing with Bitcoin in big exchanges, and by that, at the time, one of the biggest exchanges, if not the biggest one, was Poloniex. The moment that Monero in 2014 started competing with Bitcoin, if you chart it from that moment, if you were a Bitcoiner before Monero, and then realized that BTC was never going to be private by default, so you put your money in Monero, from that moment forward, you would have more money in Monero, in fiat terms, in Monero, from that investment than you would in BTC. So those are my three arguments for why it's a better store value.
You know, I guess like where I'm coming from is like if you're comparing like Bitcoin to Monero index, that's where I think you will see like Monero is trending down, you know, on a long enough time horizon. I'm not saying like in short time windows, but overall, I think the trend is that you see Monero becoming worth less in Bitcoin terms. And that's why I say it's not as good of a store of value when you're comparing it to Bitcoin, because you can just...
It depends where you chart it from. So
right.
My technical analyst and I, we butt heads at the Crypto Vigilante, so we don't all agree with each other. And so it depends where you start charting Monero from. So that chart is based on when it started being listed on Binance. So if you look at it from that, yes, you're right. And some of my technical analysts, Mr. A, says that that's where we should look at it. He agrees with you 100% because why? His argument is that's when Monero started to be used by the masses. But my emphasis and what I tell him is like, no, wait a minute. Monero, when it was on Poloniex, it was already available to the masses. So where we get to, so my argument to him, my counter argument is that I focus on when Monero and BTC started competing with each other. So the vast majority of BTC maximums, like, so Mr. A and Mr. W come from the crew that were the first to chart Bitcoin in the Bitcoin Talk forums. In my opinion, they're probably the most like world-renowned Bitcoin chart analysts. And these guys were the guys behind Bull Bear Analytics. So you remember Bull Bear Analytics? Yeah. So like, I would have to say when it comes to TA, I agree with them completely. And so if I have to agree with them on how they understand the market, I would say you're right. But I also have to keep in mind that Monero was competing with Bitcoin before Binance, right? So it's like, it depends where you look at it. But I'm saying you're right. And it's what my guys say, who are the first ones to chart Bitcoin in the Bitcoin Talk forums. They agree with you. It's just, I look at it from a different perspective. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think that an argument can be made at this point that that Monero is like ever going to go away or that it's going to go to zero. Like in my opinion, it is a tool and it does solve a problem. And so, you know, I don't consider Monero a shitcoin at all. A lot of other things I do, but not Monero. I don't think Monero is a shitcoin simply because it passes that litmus test of does it solve a problem or not.
Right.
And yeah, Monero does solve a problem, so therefore it's going to have value. And I don't think that value is going to go away. So I think Monero is going to be around for a long time. And you know, I think if anyone has like a life or death situation where like they have to have good privacy and they're not fully educated on how to do that with Bitcoin,
Right.
or at least what the risks are with
Right.
Bitcoin.
100%.
But,
Yes.
like, dude, it's amazing to have that default privacy available.
Yes.
And to use that tool to do that, you know? And I'm not saying you can't use Bitcoin privately. You certainly can, but you need to do your homework.
Yeah.
You really need to understand what the implications are of what you're doing. Because, dude, like, the blockchain is forever and the future is uncertain. So if you make some kind of mistake now, that's going to be recorded forever. So you better, you know, if you're doing some serious shit, you better know what you're doing with Bitcoin. Whereas with Monero, I'm not saying you can just like let your guard down, or
Right.
just like, you know, blindly say that Monero fixes this or should have used Monero. Like, there's still precautions you need to take even with Monero that I think a lot of the Monero reply guys that I interact with on Twitter kind of gloss over. And it's like, well, you know, a lot of times they just kind of gloss over the KYC fact. So if you get Monero through a KYC exchange, there's no erasing that KYC event.
Right.
So you've got this honeypot of data that exists off chain. So there's really nothing you can do on chain to erase that information. And there's nothing you can do to get that information back or control how it's used against it. So you just better be careful about how you're acquiring Monero. But it's great to know that, like, if you acquire it without any personally identifiable information, that you have those default privacy measures in place where you can use it and you don't have to worry so much like you do with Bitcoin.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting right now where we see ourselves at the cusp of Bitcoin history, where either Bitcoin will be a tool for freedom or will be a tool for mass surveillance and tyranny, of turnkey tyranny. Honestly, the people talk about El Salvador, and I think it's like, dude, you're giving people a mass surveillance mechanism,
right?
And it's sad. It's really sad that they're giving the illusion of freedom. They're really selling fake freedom, and but there's hope. Like Samurai Wallet is extremely impressive to me, and maybe we can talk a little bit about Wasabi. What are your thoughts on Wasabi? What happened?
Dude, Wasabi has been on this trajectory for a very long time. They've had systemic issues with their software that they have ignored, that they brushed off as personal attacks, that they have come out and said, you know, that's silly, we don't believe it, when there's like empirical evidence that can be reproduced by anyone with a block explorer. Like, you can look at the problems in that wallet, and they haven't addressed those problems. So, you know, I've been steered away from Wasabi for a long time, for the last couple of years. And just for listeners, you know, I didn't even start getting into Bitcoin until 2018. So by like...
And look at how much you're contributing.
Thank you.
Damn. Hey, so look, there's so many people out there. This is what I've been telling people for some time now. Is like, there are going to be people that are going to surprise us way more than in the future than even what Satoshi did, in my opinion, because it's just going to stack up on top of innovation, right? So you were saying
there's going to be those network effects.
Yeah. So you were saying, so Wasabi, you saw it coming, and
yeah, I knew that there were serious problems, and just the way that they responded to those issues that were brought up was a major red flag for me. And then the fact that those problems just kept happening, and news headlines kept breaking that involved Wasabi Wallet, it was just like, dude, here we go again. Like, there's another problem that you're ignoring. You were warned about this, you chose to ignore it, you chose to brush it off as a personal attack instead of fixing it. And then once they started working on Wasabi Wallet 2.0 or Wasabi 2.0, whatever it is, like, it's like they just said that this was going to fix everything. But when we started seeing the testnet transactions involving the new software, we started seeing the same problems come up from version 1. And so they really didn't do the fixes that they had the opportunity to take care of. And then, while that's going on, they decide to, like, preemptively, without any sort of regulatory requirement or any sort of legal precedence, they just decided to invite chain analysis into their coordinators so that they can start blacklisting
Oh my God.
inputs to coin checks. And that just completely defeats the purpose of a privacy-centric wallet. Like, how would you feel if I said, look, I've developed some privacy software, but before you use it, I just need to get to know you a little bit. You know, it doesn't
What?
fit the bill, right?
No, it doesn't.
Like,
That's wild.
yeah, so I just, I don't recommend that people use Wasabi. I can't recommend it in good faith. I did try Wasabi. I even did like a write-up about Wasabi, earlier in my contributions to Bitcoin content. But,
Nice.
I think good faith, I just can't recommend it anymore. And especially now that they're like actively working with chain analysis, you would be crazy to want to do that.
Wow, that's wild. That's wild. What do you think about the Lightning Network also being mapped by chain analysis right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of surveillance nodes on the network. Again, it's a tool that has some potential upsides, but you have to know how to use the tool the right way.
But that's going to require someone to be very computer savvy.
Right.
How's that going to scale? And you know what I mean? That's
right. And so, using the easiest implementation of Lightning is going to be a custodial solution. And like that's like a red line for me right there. Like, I don't use custodial services. And so
it's banking 2.0.
Right. Yeah, you're not really solving some of the fundamental issues of why Bitcoin was created in the first place.
Right.
When you're relying on these services that are provided by custodians. So, you can use Lightning in a self-custodial manner. I wrote a guide on that as well that you can find on my website, shameless plug, econoalchemist.com.
QR code right here, guys. Econoalchemist.com.
Yeah. But there are ways to use Lightning as a tool to make transactions, and the transactions that they don't want you to make. But there's like a lot more attack surface on Lightning that I think of, and I don't think it's there are zero privacy guarantees on Lightning, and I think that's
Thank you for saying that.
Realize, yeah, you can do it. It can be done, but you need to be careful about like what UTXOs you're using to open your channels. You need to be careful about what you do with those UTXOs when your channels are closed. And while your node is active, you need to be careful about. You need to make sure you're running Tor first of all, like having your IP address exposed. You just really need to be careful with how you're using it, but it can be used as a tool.
I mean, but how do you trust towards? How would you trust Lightning hubs that are on Tor and that you can't really validate and trust, but at the same time they're hidden? It's just because you have to know the state of the network in the Lightning network at all times to know how to route the transaction. So
right.
Yeah, so in other words, I'm really happy. Thank you for being so honest, because even though because there are some Bitcoiners out there that to this day are still lying to people about Bitcoin privacy.
Yeah, no, there's people out there, and very prominent people in the Bitcoin community that'll just tell you, oh, Lightning offers as good a privacy as Monero, and that's bullshit. It's not the case.
You know what the worst is? And I've already called them out by name. Mark Moss, Andreas Antonopoulos, and Tone Vase saying that Bitcoin is more private on-chain than Monero because it has more liquidity.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that for a while.
But you're still butt naked in the transactions, you know what I'm saying? Right. So there is no privacy on BTC because they're just private. Oh, they're open. They're just open transactions. I
think it's like if you boil it down to the most basic concept here, the fact is it's a public ledger. So there is zero privacy.
Exactly.
On Bitcoin. It's just, do you have the anonymity to be able to transact publicly, right? And not have that tied back to your real world identity. And that's what tools like Samurai Wallet can do.
That's right. Dude, I love Samurai. Those guys are so cool. I if it wasn't for them, like they are the reason why I'm still holding strong to Bitcoin. Like, that's my hope. What their work is the hope that I see for BTC. And it's I hope there's more that like them. I'm really happy you brought up Sparrow. So they use the same. That's awesome.
Craig Raw, the developer of Sparrow, he's here at the conference.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so you should definitely talk to him.
I would love to talk to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, please make the connection. I would love to sit down with him.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah,
We're
definitely.
going out. Econoalchemist.
That's right. Yeah.
Econoalchemist. All right, guys. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll make sure to check out his what is it, a blog website.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. My handle is @EconoAlchemist, or my website is the same thing, EconoAlchemist.com.
Right on.
I just do a lot of content and technical guides that have to do with self-custody, censorship resistance, and mining Bitcoin and home.
Mining Bitcoin at home. Whoa. Wait a minute. This conversation has to happen. What do you mean? How?
Yeah, so like about a year and a half ago, I read this guide called Mining Free the Streets, and it's by another presenter here, Diverter. And you can find him on Twitter. His handle is @Diverter_no KYC. The narratives at the time that I read this article were that mining Bitcoin at home is too expensive. You can't compete with the large institutional miners. You'd be better off, instead of wasting your money on the electricity, just using that money to go buy the Bitcoin.
Buy the Bitcoin. Yeah, it's right here. Yeah.
Those were the narratives.
Right.
And I read this guide by Diverter, and dude, he completely shattered those narratives in this very detailed and very articulate and well thought out write-up that he did. And so I contacted him and said, dude, I've got like $5,000 to play with. I've been thinking about mining. I've decided that I'm never going to use a KYC exchange again, but I want to accumulate more Bitcoin. And it just seems like if I spent the money on this miner, I would be able to generate some more Bitcoin, and I could do that without having to provide my personal information to anybody. And so we started having that conversation, and it was like, yeah, man, that's exactly it. Like you're basically dollar cost averaging through your utility bill, instead of dollar cost averaging through KYC.
Oh my gosh, this is genius.
Right. And so it solved a lot of problems for me. And he helped point me in the right direction. Like, how do I get the hardware? Who do I need to talk to buy an ASIC from it? And he helped me navigate all that. Dude, and I got my first ASIC and I plugged it in. And this thing is like seriously like an industrial piece of equipment that runs at 85 decibels and outputs 150 degrees Fahrenheit heat. And now I've got this plugged in inside my home with my wife and my kids. And it's like, now I got to do something about mitigating this noise, and I got to do something with this heat.
Yeah.
This is where like the home miner renaissance really got started, because
when was this that you got into? What
This
year?
was January of 2021 that I wrote my article.
What?
Yeah, so this is all like
Awesome.
within the last year and a half. And so like I've detailed my whole experience, like everything from the electrical upgrades I had to make, to how I routed the heat out of my house, to like how I built an enclosure for the miner to suppress the sound. And I just wrote this whole guide and put it out there in January 2021. And dude, people started reading my guide, and then they started making their own guides and doing their own contributions. And everybody's unique home situation's different, right? So everyone's going to have a different way to deal with the noise and to deal with the heat. And so, dude, there's no shortage of information. There's like a flood of information out there.
That's so cool.
About how people are taking these industrial pieces of equipment, putting them into their living spaces, and now generating non-KYC Bitcoin. They can do it completely permissionless. They don't have to ask. They don't have to open any accounts. They don't have to share any KYC data. And they're actually mining this Bitcoin for cheaper than they would be able to buy it in exchange. So like, if you spend $10 to run your ASIC in electricity for one day, you'll get 50,000 sats. if you spend that $10 at an exchange, you're gonna get 20,000 cents. So you're literally getting like a 60% discount when you're mining this Bitcoin. Now, there's some caveats there. It depends on how efficient your ASIC is. It depends on how much your electricity rate is. But I'm just speaking in general terms. Average US resident pays 13 cents per kilowatt hour. And if you're running a new gen ASIC like an S19 Pro, you have 110 terahash for 3,200 watts. And with that equation, you're stacking Bitcoin through your utility bill at a 60% discount.
Do we want this to get out?
Yes. Yeah,
Do we want this information to get out? Because I want to go home and start my own mining.
well, and you should. You know,
It's amazing. I mean, I am a Bitcoin miner,
okay.
but I'm a rebel miner.
What's a rebel?
I play with Bitcoin's computational power, but that's a whole different conversation. So during the Civil War, I'm a big blocker, like extreme
okay.
big blocker.
I got you.
Yeah, so what I am doing is that I'm focusing on building mining into enterprise level, where like I foresee Bitcoin miners competing with Amazon servers, where big data is on Bitcoin miners in the future. So that's like the big blocker mentality, right? To play with not just the coin aspect of Bitcoin, but with the bit aspect of Bitcoin, its computational power, where we do smart contracts on the Bitcoin on chain. But that's a whole different conversation. And
So it's not ASIC mining?
it is ASIC mining, 100% SHA-256. Yes,
Gotcha.
yes, in the same everything. But during the Civil War, we had very different outlooks on what Bitcoin was about, and the BTC focused on the coin aspect of Bitcoin and to make that as best of a user experience and just focus on that. In my opinion, from that perspective, I followed that logically and ended up here in Monero. But then from the other perspective of the big blocker, I'm like, no, wait a minute. Like, there's opcodes here where we can have smart contracts on the blockchain. We can store data on chain that Bitcoin Cash and BTC would have said, man, you guys are just spamming the chain. I'm like, no, this is still worthwhile. Let's fuck around with this. Let's see. Because then I started realizing, holy smokes, we are dealing with the one thing that big tech cannot do, that we can do as Bitcoiners, which is that we can wrap big data with proof of work and take their monopoly of information away from them. And in my opinion, my conspiratorial mind, this is really why the Civil War happened, is because big tech got in to obfuscate what Bitcoin was in its totality and its completeness, and to keep us away from, because we are the only things, miners like me are the only things that really pose a threat to them, in my opinion. You know, we could grow to scale to levels where at an enterprise level, miners, we can be the rivals to Amazon itself, where a startup doesn't need to have Amazon servers, but rather they'll plug into Bitcoin miners, and we're starting to see that now. Like, and obviously the chain I'm talking about is BSV. So we're starting to see that now, where like with Twitch, like .com, Relica.world. Right now we're processing. Yesterday we processed 11.7 million transactions within 24 hours, which is pretty significant, and it's still growing. Video games on chain, so it's just a whole different. It's almost like an alternate reality to Bitcoin. It's an alternate reality to Bitcoin BTC that accepts that Bitcoin is open and transparent, accepts that, and sees it as a public good, something for public space, not for the life of one's privacy. It's not for one's private life. So it's a different worldview that it's like what I take for. You know what I'm saying? But now you're getting me to geek out on the private aspect of Bitcoin, which is what BTC really focused on, and that you're doing mining from home blows my mind, man. And that you're actually getting it cheaper,
Right.
cost efficient, and that it actually works, that you're actually found a way to dollar cost average entertaining Bitcoin. That to me is incredible.
Not only that, but a lot of people are also like harvesting the heat from the ASICs, and they're like integrating it into their like central air systems in their homes. And so now they're like reducing their energy costs on natural gas because they won't even turn their furnace on anymore. They just have the heat going into the air return in their duct system in their home. And dude, they'll have their windows open in the winter time because it's 80 degrees inside their house.
So let me ask you. I remember the ant miners I used to mess with at home in like 2014, 20, and then I had Cointeras, something that I messed with as well. Those were loud. The whole room was just
Right.
How is this the one you're messing with?
They're like 85 decibels, which is like, it's equivalent to having a shop vac running in your living room 24/7.
So the noise?
Yeah, so I mean, my first approach was to like build an enclosure, and I just used some commonly available materials from Home Depot, like some plywood and MDF, and I got a 10 dB reduction, which was decent. Not great, but it was good enough that I'm still married. So, but there's been a lot of innovation in just this arena, and that's where like companies like Upstream Data come, and they have developed this solution called the black box. And so what the black box is this weatherproof enclosure that you can stick your ASIC in, and you can set it outside of your home. You don't even need to bring it inside your house anymore.
It's called what?
It's called the black box.
And what company is this?
It's Upstream Data.
Here's a QR code, guys. Get it.
And so Steve Barber from Upstream Data, he's going to be giving a presentation here tomorrow. Steve Barber started Upstream Data. Full disclosure, I am affiliated with Upstream Data.
Awesome. Good for you.
But, that aside, I'm not just saying this because I'm affiliated with them. I'm saying this because I have a black box at home and I run one of my miners, and it's weatherproof. It's made to be used outdoors. You put your ASIC in it, and all you have to do is have a licensed electrician wire up an outlet for you to plug in your miner and hook up your Ethernet. And it has this design called a tortuous path where the air has to go around these like S shapes inside the box. And because of this tortuous path, that's what suppresses the noise. So now you have this box that can be outdoors.
Nice.
And not only that, but it's also quiet. He got his design to reduce the sound by 20 decibels.
Gosh. You guys are awesome. I can't believe you guys are doing it. Incredible to me.
And so it's just this like instant problem solver where it's quiet. You don't have to put it in your home. You can just set it like next to your house or next to your garage. And you don't have to do anything with the heat because the heat just comes out of the vent and it just goes to atmosphere.
Like you just also come to the house and warm you up in the winter, right?
Or
run all.
Yeah, or if you wanted to, like, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can hook up some ductwork to it and heat your garage or heat your house with it too. You can do whatever you want.
That's just so cool.
Yeah, dude, there's just been this renaissance of innovation when it comes to using these miners. There's a guy called CoinHeat that I did a panel with him yesterday at the Bitcoin conference.
Yeah.
And dude, this guy lives in Minnesota. He has a 17,000-gallon swimming pool that he keeps over 100 degrees in the dead of winter with the heat from his miners.
No way! Oh my gosh, dude, we gotta hang out. We gotta I have a problem. We're gonna do something here, okay? We're gonna do something for you guys, and because the thing about this is like, is it? Do you guys want this information to get out? Do you guys want the world to know this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you guys want obviously you spoke at the big conference.
And here's why, because well-informed people tend to make good decisions. And there is a war being waged. Your money is being weaponized against you.
That's right.
You need to have good information so you can make good decisions so that you can protect the things that you value in life and protect your way of life. And having the tools available to you and having the information about how to use those tools is the only way people are going to have a fighting chance here.
Okay, so does this mean we can also do Monero? We could probably mine Monero and be cost efficient as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Monero is, like I said, it's a tool. It solves a problem,
Right.
and I think it has value.
But if you found it cost efficient and impossible to be profitable in mining Bitcoin with ASICs from home, I mean, that's something else. How about we just, for now, let's focus on Bitcoin. And I want to see what we can do to help you carry this message further, because this is very valuable. I agree with you. This is very empowering, and I want to learn from you, because this is great. I can't believe you guys are doing it. I didn't even know. See, and this is the thing. This is why we created the Crypto Vigilante, because we're the only place in crypto where we have big blockers, small blockers, Monero people. We're all here communicating, dialoguing, and learning from one another, right? Vast majority of my team, actually the whole team of mine, disagree with everything I explained to you about what I do on the side with BS. They completely disagree with it. They see it, every argument against it, they disagree. But we are able to talk about it.
Right.
And they can understand, at least they're learning from my experience. Oh, he's doing that. Okay, that would be possible if he did that. Okay, cool. See what I'm saying? So it's cool to learn from each other. We already gave you guys where you can find information about Econoalchemist. Any parting words? Anything you would like to share with anything you would like to share with the audience here?
Yeah, don't let any of the technicalities of getting into this stuff and using these tools stop you from just getting started. I didn't start this way. I started just like everyone else. I thought, or what I assume everyone else started as, which is I thought Bitcoin was like a stock, and I could put in a little bit of money and make more money with it. And it has taken me a very long time of just making small incremental steps towards having better privacy, learning how to use these tools in a way that can actually guard the values that I have in my life. And, it's taken me a long time to get here. And I'm just thrilled to have platforms like this and the Bitcoin conference to be able to share some of my experience and to have people learn from some of my mistakes and just to hear me out for a minute and understand that there's something bigger going on here, and your government hates you. Your government is trending toward tyranny.
Yep.
And if you value being able to communicate with your family, being able to transact economically with the world around you, being able to do the things you value in life, then you better start learning how to use some of these tools that are available today,
right?
So that you can guard what you value in your life and live the kind of life that you want to live, free from tyranny and permissionless, without having to ask for your government's permission.
Dude, this is such a fascinating conversation. I can't believe you guys are doing this. This is blowing my mind. Oh my gosh. This is incredible. I'm at loss for words, and I want to help you spread this message. This is so cool. This is so cool, and we're here at the Guns and Bitcoin conference, and are teaching people how to use their homes to create Bitcoin. That's wild. So not only can you create your own guns, you can come from your own, but you can also rock on with your own freaking miners.
Right.
And you found a way that's cost efficient and can be repurposed. This is, to me, incredible.
That's exactly why this conference is here. It's that intersection of freedom technology where if you're going to protect yourself, you need that firepower. And you need to have access to firepower without permission. And that's where the 3D printing part of it comes in. And you're going to need to be able to interact economically with the world around you. And that's where the Bitcoin, the Monero part of it comes in. So, this conference is just that perfect intersection of freedom technology. And, I'm glad that we can sit down and have a discussion and share some ideas about it.
Brother, hey, it's beyond a pleasure to get to know you, and dude, what you're doing is phenomenal. Econoalchemist, guys. Go read his stuff right now and start geeking out, please. The sooner the better. Thank you for being here.